We are here, everyone. This is the official first pilot episode of Hard Refresh. And man, we are excited. It's just going to be Karina and I today before we start bringing on guests, because we have quite the wait list that's already starting to build up on that. But until that happens, we're going to take this first pilot episode and we're going to dive right in to our first segment like we said we would, which is Quick Control. Karina, do you want to take it away?
Yes. Okay, so we're just going to give a couple of updates in regards to what we're working on. It's so funny because Caden and I have been geeking out. And okay, I actually have to set the tone first because I'm going to challenge myself to expand my vernacular, because I realize I say the same words over and over and geek out and excited. So I really want people to hold me accountable. But so we are actually going to join the Tech and Innovation Committee here in like a couple minutes, but we want to be able to kind of show everybody we're working on the webinar that's posted already, actually, from last week's thread, which was about implementation, adaptation, automation. And so that's ready to go. And then we have some content that was shared from a couple of the committee members. So that's on the LinkedIn group. And we're also really excited to think through maybe a town hall or a webinar that's going to be live. We got really great momentum. Like Caden said, there's a couple people that are interested in joining as guests, and they are brilliant in their space, great energy, and can provide a ton of value. So we're ready to go.
Yeah, and it's just going to be dive in, figure it out. And as we hear back from the audience on what is resonating, we'll adjust and fine tune and try and create more value. That's the whole purpose of the committee, is how do we generate value and resources for the cleaning industry. So diving into segment number 2, though, okay, Karina, before I say this, I have never heard someone say cache.
Cache? Clear cache? I say that all the time. Did you clear cache?
Yeah, I call it just cache. Did you clear the cache?
Oh, wait, who's saying it wrong?
I don't know. Just when you said it the other day, I was just like, huh. I was like, I've never heard someone say that. I said, but it's not, I mean, it doesn't come up in conversation. It's not one, but no, I just realized I was like, I always just said clear the cache, and maybe no one's ever said anything to me.
Okay, we're definitely
cache sounds way fancier.
It does sound, and I will tell you, I've said it so many times, because when we were like troubleshooting for Pioneer team members, it'd be like, Karina, it's not the website's not working. Well, I'm like, clear cache. You got to clear the cache. Now I'm like, oh no, as I say it, it's like Arkansas. This is hysterical, but like my son thought that it was Arkansas for so long. And I was like, honey, it's Arkansas. And he's like, why? It's spelled Arkansas.
It's spelled Arkansas.
Like, oh no, you're 16. That's not good.
Oh,
but
that's funny.
We digress.
Yeah. Well, the topic for our cache today is the myth of more bodies. Now, this one's interesting because this isn't just relevant to cleaning, although that's what we're going to focus on. Often we think like, oh, human beings, throw it at the problem, more human beings. You just might be adding to chaos. So, Karina, let's dive into this. Yeah. What's this myth?
Okay, so this is kind of where you and I are different in the sense of, immediately when I met you, I can tell that you're very process-oriented, super disciplined, and I think that's one of the things I admire about you. I am more like, whoa, we'll figure it out. Like, it's totally fine. And I always think that people will be able to produce, and if you empower them, and we talked about this a little bit a second ago, like what ends up happening when you do put the people before the process, there's inevitable friction that will come, whether someone's having a bad day, they forget a step. And if you don't lead with your processes, then it's going to inevitably crash. And so, and then you're also talking through like implementation and onboarding and like hiring someone new. So I think bodies sound so bad, like people, team members, right? I always lead with people, but I think that it's fair to say that processes should lead.
I've converted you.
I know. That wasn't even a challenge. I submitted immediately. I'm like, that's all right.
Well, see, here's the thing. Like, I always had the belief and mindset that like, hey, always bring in A players.
Yeah.
And A players are the ones that build processes, right? What makes them A players is they're strong executors, and great leaders develop other leaders. Well, you do that by actually having a playbook and systems that you're running.
Right.
Now, what would be funny is if you asked my team if I'm a process guy, they would be like, no.
Really?
Caden's a visionary, and he's like, and
yes.
and so the reality is I try having foot in both, but the belief system that's evolved over the years is that people are not your greatest asset, your processes are. But people build your processes.
Yeah.
So people still matter.
So I was going to ask you, do you think that you have always been an A player? Is that something that is inherited, or is it something that the culture influences? And I know that there's needs to have different types of players, but like expand on that a little bit, because I'm curious from your perspective as a CEO, right? Like, how do you think about that?
Yeah, I definitely didn't used to be an A player.
Okay.
Like I think about and even employees that I've mentored up, like my definition of like holding someone accountable has evolved over my years of experience. So, and I think as a cleaning company operator and in-house team, you evolve in your experience as well. For me, I look back on some embarrassing. I'll tell this story really quick. I remember the first time I ever hopped on a call with a customer. And I was with our CEO at the time, and he introduced me on the call, and I just like was silent. I was like, he's like, say hi. and I was like, oh, hey, that's all I said. This was like a decade ago, but I think back on like, if that was my experience with a staff member, my immediate judge today would be like, that's not A player talent, So I definitely believe it can be built up and worked on, but I think that's the key to it is the person has to realize that like, I always got to evolve. I've got to improve. I've got to become better.
Yeah. And
to the point where I have gotten into the position I am as a CEO. And so, yeah, and it doesn't stop.
Okay.
There's other CEOs that I admire and look up to and view as better A players than I am in leading their companies. And so I try and pattern after them. So it's a constant work in progress.
I think you're an exceptional leader. I'm going to pivot a little bit. Did I have to sugarcoat that first before I pivot? So no, I'm curious from like a body's perspective, right? Because this is, I think, a question that I get a lot in terms of, okay, I'm going to add a new technology. I'm going to implement software. I'm going to do this. Tech is amazing, but who's doing it? Like, who's leading the charge first in the implementation of technology? Who's helping with the maintenance of the technology? Like, who are the people that are involved? And we can go as granular as like, is it ops? Is it client engagement? Is it the senior leadership team? Like, how do you answer those questions for companies?
So when someone comes to me and they don't have this mapped out, I say, hey, just a heads up, it probably is not going to work out.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think it's all of them. But what's interesting is we have such a strong dominance in the amount of personnel that have to work front lines. That is our industry's offering, right? Right. That's cleaning. So what's interesting is if we're trying to implement solutions, robotics, technology, whatever it is, it's to scale that back because it's it's the highest expense on anyone's books most of the time. Right. But like that scaling that back, making the frontline more productive, adding things to their playbooks that make them faster at their jobs, all of those things, it's kind of a catch-22. You have to add more administrative bodies to reduce those bodies. Right. So it's not, the goal isn't to just go let a bunch of people go. The goal is to say, hey, how do we grow without having to add more personnel? Right. I tell my staff all the time, I say, before you come to me with a request to hire a new employee, right now it's, hey, is your entire team using AI to do 25, 50% more in your day? Right. At a cleaning company, that's going to be at the administration level. Obviously, a frontline cleaner is not using AI to clean faster. Right. But at least not today. Right. but the idea that eventually administrative personnel need to realize that they need to invest more in administration on the onset to make it leaner at a later future date when they're really scaling. Right. But to answer your question, you need executive team sponsorship and beliefs. First and foremost is you all have to know the problem you're going to try and solve. Yes. Amen. So
Love
Like,
that.
and